you that first slide, I think it was, or back a few. Yeah, and then the one prior to that. I see we mentioned 27.5, but there seems to be a lot of other fees. I want to make sure that we're, for lack of a better term, talking about total compensation.
Yeah, when you see the per month item, that's because it was for an indeterminate period and it was for the duration of the project. And typically, you may put a maximum not to exceed. Where you see the prices without a per month, for example, MIS reporting, that was a fixed price agreement, I believe, so that oftentimes, if you have a very clear idea of how long things are going to take, you'll go for a fixed price contract, and then if they mess it up, it's on their dime rather than on our dime, etc. So the 38,500, the 19,000 price for the HR review, that would have been just a plain old, here's a quote, do you want to accept the quote, yes or no? Yes, we accept it, do the work.
So we didn't include the 300,000 plus the 35 a month plus travel. Is that apples and oranges to the
$300,000 amount there included the $35,000 a month plus travel, which was the amount that you were paying for the Vice Chancellor of Information Technology interim, for want of a better expression.
So in some cases we were paying the higher rate, and then some cases we were paying a little bit lower on the monthly, is what you're trying to say? Okay, thank you.
Were there 3 people, I thought? I don't have the contract in front of me, that were getting the 27,500.
At various times, there have been different numbers of people. The highest number of people we've had committed to the projects at any given time were 3. You're correct. But for most of the time, it was 2. It was Dan Duffy. I think you probably all remember Dan Duffy as the Vice Chancellor of IT, and Mindy was one of the project managers that worked on primarily the Starfish project. And there was another project manager that worked on some other things as well. If we look at what they did now, I've actually reviewed the work product as best as one can long after some of the actual events took place. The Oracle to SQL conversion and the district office building move was completed. Standards were acceptable. There was nothing wrong with the work they did. And the move to Oracle, from Oracle to structured query language in the long term will be saving the district about $125,000, $130,000 a year. Oracle is a very expensive partner to work with. So going to SQL will save us quite a considerable amount of money over the life of the programs that we're using them for. Starfish conversion, mostly completed, and I use the word marginally acceptable there. The work that they did was fine, but we didn't get to completion. Some of that was of our own making. Starfish is one of those products that we and if I were a consultant, I'd have to take some ownership of this. Our consultant, our trusted advisor, I don't think set it up well enough that we could get to completion in the time available to the standard that we needed it. And what has happened is we got to that point. It required other things to be completed first, like move to Active Directory, move to single sign-on, which were not part of the Starfish conversion, but needed to be done anyway. So they couldn't complete because other pieces hadn't been done. So what in actual fact happened, they took it as far as they could. We took it over after we had, IT took it over after we had. We were trained by Forelli to actually know the changes that they had made to the program so that we could support it adequately. And we took it over, and we're now marching it across the finish line. HR colleague process review and report. You asked about that a moment ago, and this is exactly what it says. They came and looked at our processes within the colleague system. They made a whole host of recommendations. It cost us $19,000, but seeing the way that it is streamlining our HR processes, it was a great outcome. And that will be a stepping stone to the next part of what we would be doing there, would be setting up a complete system within HR for position control. We do not have a technology-based position control system at this time. It has set the ground rules and the groundwork for getting us to a full position control system. SharePoint portals, Columbia, MJC, and Central Services, it's completed. But like so many things in the technology world, things have moved on. So there is a lot of refinement that we have to do within our organization to make sure when the portal is actually brought live, it's reflective of the situation today, not the situation in our district back in May of last year. CROA is a reporting system. CROA is actually incomplete as well. The district currently uses CROA, Cognos, Power BI, Crystal Reports, and another one that I can't remember off the top of my head. Thank you, Tableau, yes. Thank you, Jill. We have a decision meeting coming up imminently because a decision was made back in Dan Duffy's days that we would move to CROA. That was never actually followed through and implemented. And more importantly, we didn't go through, I don't believe, the appropriate collaborative process, participatory governance process. So we're trying to get to a decision point so that we can take the work that has been done by Firelli on CROA or Cognos or what have you, and once again drive that across the finish line when we've got the input from the appropriate people that are going to be using this as our end users. Active Directory, likewise, Active Directory, for those who've been here a long time, will tell you, Active Directory has been talked about, and we're going to convert to a single forest, etc., for the last 10 plus years. They started work on Active Directory, but because of other challenges, once again, that was not completed. They did a lot of the work. We have now completed our Active Directory. We have over 100,000 students registered in Active Directory, and now I think we're at nearly 20,000 students over the summer months have actually set up their accounts within Active Directory. We still have some more work to do to make sure we get the full batch of students online. We're talking about summer students, etc. But most of the work in Active Directory has been done, with the exception that Active Directory has a lot of moving parts. What we have to do is we have to continue to migrate those products and services which we haven't migrated. If we'd have taken everything at one fell swoop and said, let's make it all Active Directory, huge amount of risk. We identified the first handful of products and applications. We've migrated those, and we're migrating about another 2 every month. So by fall, practically everything we have should be on Active Directory. And most importantly, for security purposes, single sign-on as well. MIS reporting, that's mostly completed. They completed, once again, as much as they could at the time, but MIS reporting is an ongoing thing. It keeps changing. From semester to semester, month to month, we're required to report different things. We're required to report slightly differently. So we get patches. That's something that we are now managing within the IT department. They took the first steps in changing our MIS reporting across to the full colleague system, and now IT has picked that up and is carrying that. And the IT technology plan, it was acceptable. I would say, I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Firelli. It looks very much like a boilerplate that I saw at Peralta, and for $25,000, my personal judgment is it was a lot for what we got, considering there was so much boilerplate. But the reality is we needed a technology plan in place at that time for accreditation purposes. It would have been a huge undertaking for a staff here, absent a Vice Chancellor of Information Technology. I think that's all I have for you. And
Okay,
any more questions? Yeah, of course.
I've got one. We're an academic institution. Forgive me. I got in a car in Flagstaff, Arizona at 4 a.m., so I'm a little slow. what grade would you give Forelli? And I know you can never know going in with these consultants and specialty services. What grade would you give them on the big ticket items overall?
C.
Thank you.
C grade. Meets the minimum standard. They haven't. Yeah, yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. I'm glad to see our information technology staff had the skills to complete some of these items up there, so it's nice to see. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll move on now to item 6, the action item consent agenda. First of all, does any trustee wish to pull any item off the consent calendar?
Yes. 6.14.
Okay. 6.1. Which is the 2018 YCCD EEO plan. Okay. So with that, Chancellor, I guess we'll bring that back to next month. Okay. So we'll bring item 6.14 back for next month's meeting. And with that, is there a motion to accept the remainder of the items on the consent calendar? So moved by Trustee Viss. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Trustee Beggs. All those in, any further comments or questions? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Items 7.1 and 7.2 have already been handled by Connie. Thank you, Connie, wherever you're at. Move on now to item 7.3, Central Services Measure E Proposed Budget Adjustment. We're back to Judy.
Yes, we're back to me.
All right.
I can do this very quickly, or we can take any time you might need. This document was provided to you. It highlights the projects that we'd like to proceed forward with regards to the interest earnings. We have consulted bond counsel on the expenditures and how we might be able to expend these last bond dollars, and they have conveyed that small capital projects are a good way to expend these funds and would adhere to the bond language that was in the original Measure E documentation that went to the Modesto Bee and advertised in other areas. The board did have some interest in correcting deficiencies within our own projects in our own buildings here at the campuses so that we can right the ship on our facilities assessment report. In addition, these projects were brought before the facilities committees at Columbia College and Modesto Junior College to have buy-in on how we were going to expend these additional funds. Are there any questions?
What are the new projects?
They're listed, and I'm so sorry I don't have the page number.
Is it the page after this?
Yeah, yes it is. We would like to begin with the 2 projects listed at Columbia College and the 5 at Modesto Junior College.
Okay, I don't believe I have that page because
Is it on the green sheet?
is it on?
Green sheet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, on the green sheet. Okay, so it's previous. It's this, right? Thank you, Jill.
And based on the preliminary estimates, and again, these are just very brief preliminary estimates, I should be able to get through most of these depending upon the information that we receive back in bidding days, those types of things. Would you like me to read those off, Anne?
No,
Okay.
I found them. I didn't get my board packet a hard copy until yesterday, so
Okay.
that's why
Right.
not so good
It
tonight.
took me a while to find it too, so.
The recommended action is that the Board of Trustees approves the revised Central Services Measure E bond project budget adjustments as attached to the agenda for June 13th, 2018. So are there any further questions, comments? Anyone want to make a motion?
Move approval?
Move approval by trustee Hallinan. Is there a second? Second by trustee Rojas. Any further comments, questions, concerns? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you.
We'll move on now to item, thank you, Judy. Move on now to item 7.4, establishment of the 2018-19 appropriations limit. Sarah.
Good evening, Chancellor, trustees. Before you this evening is for discussion and approval is our 2018-19 appropriations limit. This is part of Government Code Section 7910, where the governing board is required to establish our appropriations limit for the following year. So attached to the board agenda item is the GAN limit worksheet that's provided by the State Chancellor's Office. And what this does is it takes our 17-18 appropriations limit, takes into consideration the population change factor, which would show that the district could potentially, if the system was 100% funded by the state, $153 million. However, if you look lower in section 2, you can see that we've calculated we'll receive approximately $90 million, but please take into consideration that this is just an estimate, and it's also looking at our FTS from 16-17 that was reported lower than our target. It was at the 15,393, and we are at 16,542. So if you have any questions about that calculation, I would be happy to address them.
Any further questions for Sarah? Okay, the recommended action is that the Board of Trustees adopts a report establishing the 2018-2019 appropriations limit as attached to your June 13, 2018 agenda. So having said all that, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved by trustee DeMartini. Is there a second? Second by trustee Viss. Any further questions, comments? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Move on now to item 7.5, Proposition 30 Education Protection Account.
Yes.
Sarah's back.
Yes, I didn't have to go very far. So again, before you this evening for discussion and approval is the Proposition 30 Education Protection Act. Back in 2012, Proposition 30 was passed, which it increased our sales and use tax as well as our income tax during a time in which the system was losing significant funding, and that passage of that proposition tried to stabilize our funding. So in 2016, Proposition 55 passed to extend the income tax portion of that original proposition. Within that Proposition 55 passing, we are required to report to you how much we do receive in the fiscal year as well as how we are spending it. So in 2017-18, we received about $12.8 million in EPA funds. These are not new funds. They are ongoing, but they are not new. They are just helping us remain stable at our apportionment limits. And we did use all of these funds towards our instructional salaries and benefits. We obviously expend significantly more in our instructional salaries and benefits, so this $12.8 million offsets a small portion of that. If you have any questions?
I have a question, and I'm probably just confused, and you may need to make it clear. These funds, we have to vote on them even though they're part of our normal apportionment.
Correct.
But does the fact that the 7-year tax passed in 2017 expires rather soon, and we're putting this into ongoing expenses, is that something the board should be concerned about?
So as the time gets closer, where this was passed in 2016, so 7 years from that is the 2023. So what we're going to have to watch from the state is whether or not they have, the governor's been putting away the rainy day fund. So we'll have to see if they're going to start allocating those funds back into our system or if they're going to try to go for another tax extension. But there hasn't been any discussion about that yet because we are kind of far off. We're in 2018 versus 23, and with the governor changing, it probably hasn't come up yet.
So the board shouldn't be worried at all about putting it into?
I'm not going to say that. I think it's something to keep an eye on, but I don't think it's something to react with right now, especially with the new funding formula coming down. There's a lot of changes going on in the way that we are funded. So there's a lot of other balls being juggled in the air right now that impact the way we take a look at our budget. So I think we need to grasp those a little bit, understand those more before we, really become concerned with what's going on with these funds.
Okay. Bring it back to the board. So is there the recommended action that the Board of Trustees approves the expenditure of EPA funds as instructional salary and benefits? Is there a motion?
I've got a question, Mr. Chairman. Suppose we do not approve it, what happens to the money?
Well, it's pretty clear based on the language of both Prop 30 and the extension, Prop 55, that the funds can only be used for salary and benefits, correct?
For instructional salaries and benefits.
Instructional salary and benefits.
We get the funds, but we would be out of compliance in terms of the audit requirements if the board so chooses not to approve the board agenda item. It's just part of the language. The money still comes in, but part of that language is the compliance that we are reporting out how we are spending it.
Well, if the money comes in and we have not voted for it, then the faculty doesn't get the raise?
Oh, this is completely separate from that.
So what happens to it?
Well, it's money. This is money that's already been appropriated to us as part of our normal appropriations from the state.
Yes.
It's coming to our institution. It's identified in a set amount. That set amount can only be used for instructional salary and benefits. So this is routine and customary language that the board has to adopt on an annual basis per the proposition language. And as Sarah pointed out, that if we did not vote on this, we would be in non-compliance with the funds, and potentially if an audit were conducted, we may be on the hook to pay those funds back or have to prove how we spent them.
Yes.
It's part of our normal appropriations. It's not new money that the state is in the agenda item. It's not new money that we're getting. It's already money that's been appropriated to us. We just have to verify that we're identifying this amount for only instructional salary and benefits.
Sounds like a setup to me, but let's vote for it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'll move we accept the recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Trustee Rojas, second by Trustee Hallinan. Any further discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Reluctantly.
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll move on now to item 7.6, General Fund Amended Budget for 2017-2018 and Tentative Budget for 2018-2019.
Hello again, I'm back. So we have before you tonight for review and approval of the 2017-18 amended budget and adoption of the 2018-19 tentative budget. And I'm going to try to not belabor either of these documents. We CBOs do have a tendency to belabor. So on the 2017-18 amended budget, there are only two changes on the budget. And on your handout, you have the general fund unrestricted revenue budget. And so the only changes that we're discussing this evening, I'm sorry, I have the wrong presentation up. So if you could ignore that, we're working off this today for this moment. We're looking at items, notes 2 and 4 on that page. And so under note 2, the district received $541,164 from the California Community College's Chancellor's Office, recalculation of general apportionment for fiscal years 2015-16 and 2016-17. So you can see that on item 2 under the 2017-18 amended budget. And then item 4,
The district received $458,627 in 2017-18 discretionary mandates one-time funds and $184,283 in one-time general apportionment funds from fiscal year 2015-16. Those funds totaling $642,910 were allocated out to the college. To the colleges. And again, you can see that number, the $642,910 on the amended budget on the revenue portion. So that brings the total revenue to $103 million approximately. So those are the only changes on the amended budget, and we'd like to ask for your approval.
So this will be a two-part motion. So we're going to take the amended budget for 2017-2018 general fund budget first, and then we'll get into the tentative budget, correct?
You can do it however you're used to doing it. You can wait till the end if you'd like.
You want to break them up, or do you want to do them all together?
Let's do them.
Wait. All right. Carry on.
Moving on. So for me, that was really quick. So now the big test, the budget presentation. So we have before you tonight the 2018-19 tentative budget, and let's see what I have up there. Okay. Also, I do have a horrible habit of just going on and leaving the same slide up there. So if I do that, please let me know. So the tentative budget is the draft budget developed to start out the fiscal year on July 1st. It's based on our best and most conservative assumptions at the point in time the budget was developed. Our fiscal year ends on June 30th, 2018, after which we will actually have final revenue and expenditures for the year confirmed. The adopted budget is the year's final budget, and that will be adopted annually. It's adopted by the board in September. And that is based on final state budget information and also the actual amounts from our prior year, so 2017-18. And so in the final budget, the amounts are much more certain to move forward. So our budget planning strategies, I think you all know I started on March 1st. I started talking about Yosemite's budget sometime in April, and we needed to have a very fast timeline, but I did want to adhere to some basic principles. So we tried to base our budget on realistic budget projections at the time of preparation. We utilized a comprehensive multi-year approach to budget development and fiscal planning. So we looked at several year projections. We were using 3 at that time. We've expanded to 5-year projections now. We engaged in open dialogues with stakeholders to the extent possible, given the short time frame. And then we distinguish between ongoing and one-time revenues and align expenditures accordingly. So we need to make sure that we are not using one-time funds for ongoing expenditures as we move forward. And preserve one-time funds in the ending balance to create a savings for future years, and implement efficiencies to improve services and lower cost. So I'm not going to go through this full timeline, but I'm presenting it here to show you that Fiscal Services sent out salary and fringe benefit data to the colleges at the end of January and received back confirmation and any changes by the end of February from the colleges. And then we sent out targets on March 9th. So the reason that's important is that that all happened before May revise, which occurred approximately on May 10th, and certainly before last Friday, when further changes were made before the final budget was settled for community colleges. So this budget is perhaps more tentative than most tentative budgets are, in that it is based solely on Jan 10, the governor's Jan 10 budget. And in that budget, the governor had introduced his new funding formula, And at that time, Yosemite CCD was one of the losers, which meant that we could expect no new revenue, including COLA. So this budget is, the revenue assumptions assume a hold harmless budget, no new revenues, no COLA. And what we did was we took last year's revenue and we took out the one-time money because we didn't know whether there would be any. And there's no COLA, and that is what we based our budget on. It's also based on 16,542 full-time equivalent students, that target will be met, same target as 17-18. That part-time equity dollars are allocated based on the statewide formula. 2% of enrollment fee collections are retained by the district for administrative costs per state guidelines. Mandated cost reimbursement of $28.44 per FTS. Unrestricted state lottery is calculated at $146 per credit, and enrollment fees remain at $46 per unit. So, based on that, we had a beginning fund balance, projecting a beginning fund balance of $14.8 million, total unrestricted revenue of $101.9 million approximately, and a projected total unrestricted fund balance of funds available of $116.7 million in revenue. So then for our tentative budget expenditure assumptions, we included the STRS and PERS cost increases totaling $1.2 million approximately, and you can see the division between the three areas. The annual transfer to the...
Susan, could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Like when you just like referred, could you like say line 14? You know, just say what line we're on, because you're moving. I know you're trying to go quickly,
I'm sorry, and I do apologize. My lines are not numbered, but I'll take more time to get you to where I am. How about that? I'm sorry.
Okay. I mean, line 14 is, I just happened to catch that one quickly, but
Is it?
It says CalSTRS on behalf. Oh, that's the different one.
Yeah, let me...
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let me see if I can get it on my budget document, because my presentation's not, I don't have line numbers. Okay. I'm sorry. Let me do that real quick. So right now I'm just going over assumptions, so I'm not on a line item, but I will do that. Did you want me to go back to the last slide? Okay. So for our expenditures, we're doing the PERS and STRS cost increase. They're a total of $1.2 million, and we did augment the campus's budgets for that, as well as central services. We have the annual transfer to the health fund and OPEB trust of approximately $1 million, a designated reserve of 10%, and then we have a contingency held for future PERS and STRS rate increase costs of approximately $1.8 million. So moving to the expenditure overview, in total, let's see, on line 33, you can see that we have total expenditures of approximately $102 million. I'm trying to see. Transfer. I'm looking for some of those assumptions.
Yeah, but I want to make sure that you have expenditure overview at the top, and is that page? I mean, we've got 6 or 7 pages. I don't even know what page we're on. Is it the one that our top says unrestricted general fund budget tentative? You said line 33. Not all of them.
It's page 2 of.
Okay, that's
Does that
help. When you have a different title at the top, and I'm looking to find the page, it's difficult.
I see, and I do apologize. That's
some people are more skillful at jumping around, but I really was lost. Okay, I find line 33 now. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I didn't realize that there was a discrepancy. So we have approximately $102 million in expenditures projected, and ending with a fund balance of $14.6 million. Now, the problem with this budget, remember I talked about that it's very tentative. It's completely off the table at this point because we are no longer on the losing side of the funding formula. We actually will receive COLA, and we will receive an amount beyond COLA.
but we need the board to adopt this budget so that we have a spending authority as of July 1st. So this will be our spending, our budget as of July 1st, and then on September 15th, we will come back to you with a budget that is more, reflects more what's really going to happen as we move forward into 18-19. So with that, I'd like to talk to you just a few minutes about the funding formula. That the final formula that was adopted on Friday of last week ended up adding $269.7 million for transitioning to the new funding formula. It is now being phased in over a 3-year period. So if you recall, in the governor's budget, it was going to be, I think, 50% FTES, and then 25% supplemental grant, and then 25% student success. In May revised, the governor proposed 60% FTES, and then 20/20 of the other two components. And then, there were still a lot of objections about this formula. And so now we have a 3-year phase-in of the funding formula. Additionally, the summer shift, he could not get the districts off that we need the summer shift, and so that will still be allowed. There is a hold harmless provision as well as a COLA guaranteed for the next 3 years. And then after that, there is some sort of hold harmless provision, meaning that the computational revenue, the districts will receive the computational revenue, the higher of current year or prior year. The problem is that these terms are new, and we, the districts, the chancellor's office needs time to define these terms, and we, the districts, need time to get our arms around what these mean, and then what the impacts will be to the districts over time, because the real key is what will we get in year 4. And then the preliminary simulation that the Chancellor's Office sent out for May revise showed the district would receive approximately $7 million. We got an email from the Vice Chancellor of Fiscal and Finance from the Chancellor's Office 15 minutes later saying, no, those are just estimates, and they're using old data, and we're going to have to do more work around that. And then as of Friday, there have been more changes made. So the Chancellor's Office is saying they will now send out new simulations. And so I don't have any reason to believe that our position will change to the negative again. I think this is going to be a very positive thing for Yosemite Community College District as we move forward. For the next slide, these are just some of the other things that were included, including the approval of the one-time college with $100 million in revenue, one-time funding, and then $20 million ongoing funding. It is probably not some of our favorite topics to talk about throughout the system. Other ongoing, $50 million to increase full-time faculty. And I'd like to just drop down to other one-time funding. The deferred maintenance line item that was at $171 million has now dropped down to $28 million. So that line item is a balancer. It starts out high, and then if they need revenue elsewhere, which they took revenue from that line item to add so that they could have that COLA for all districts for the 3 years. So I'm going to go ahead and just move on from this page unless anyone has any questions on it. So finally, we have opportunities and challenges. Our opportunities are the new funding formula, guided pathways, strong workforce program. These are all programs that are providing resources and opportunities for the students of Columbia College and Modesto Junior College. So these are going to be very exciting for the district as we move forward. And then, of course, we have challenges, and the new funding formula is going to be a challenge. So back in the day when SB 361 was adopted, districts didn't know how to, I don't want to use the word manipulated, but we didn't know how to work the formula to the best advantage of the colleges and of the district. But here we are probably 10 years later, and we all know how to work that formula. We all know how to make it work to the best advantage. So the new funding formula, the Chancellor's office has to get their arms around how they're going to implement it, then they have to convey that to us. And once we know that and we start understanding how the metrics will work, we'll get our arms around it, and we'll be able to do that very well. So I don't have any doubts about that. We do have increasing costs in several areas, including salaries, stirs and PERS, and fringe benefits. And then finally, we need to address the challenge of maintaining the district's fiscal indicators at appropriate levels, and that includes our salaries and benefits as a percentage of total expenditures, our fund balance, and other fiscal indicators that show that the district's fiscal stability is on the right track. So I think that the funding formula is going to provide opportunities for us that we needed, and I look forward to working with the board as we move forward to adoption of the final budget in September. Are there any questions?
They now have to approve, is it the 15th or the 30th that they have to approve the budget?
Oh, June 15th, they won't be late. Actually,
yeah, not anymore because it comes out of their pocket, yeah. So I guess, so we have since we're using Jan 10, we're going to have a conservative budget for now.
This is, as I said, very conservative. It does not even have a COLA in it because we had no idea until May revise, and our documents are due, we went out in March with the tentative, with the budget targets, and then May revise was so much later. So we are going to be working next year on our calendar a little bit to see if we can move things up a bit so we can incorporate more new information. But honestly, it generally works pretty well. It is not often we have a change of this magnitude this late in the season.
Okay, are there any other questions for Susan? Okay, the recommended action is that the Board of Trustees, 1, approves the amended 2017-2018 general fund budget, and 2, adopts the 2018-2019 tentative budget for the Yosemite Community College District, and 3, directs staff to file it with the Stanislaus County Superintendents of Schools by July 1st, 2018. So that will be the entire motion. I'll entertain someone to move it forward.
I'll move it.
Moved forward by Trustee Viss. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Rojas with some hesitation. No, but there we go. All those in favor, are there any other questions, comments? None. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we'll move on to item 7.7, Governing Board Member Election. So the proposed resolution language is included in your board packet.
I move the resolution, the recommended action.
So moving resolution number 17-18.10, ordering an election to be conducted on November 6, 2018, in Yosemite Community College District, direct that the adopted resolution be filed with Stanislaus County Superintendent Schools prior to June 29, 2018. Someone would like to move that forward?
I thought that's what I was doing.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Sorry. So a second?
I'll second.
We're 5 plus hours in, and I'm at meeting fatigue. So seconded by Trustee Beggs. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We'll move on now to board comments, and we'll start with our new student trustee.
So I've spent the last 3 weeks participating in ASMJC's summer trainings, and I look forward to spending time with Columbia students when they return from summer break. And that's all.
Hey, Trustee Hallinan, your road trip from Flagstaff, maybe.
Yeah, boy, I went through a lot of community college districts. Started with the Coconino at 4 a.m. and then Barstow and Bakersfield, Fresno. Anyway, I'm shot. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Martin?
I met with the Columbia College president for the last time to say goodbye. And I met with the chancellor and met with the Policies and Procedures Committee. And I'd just like to give a shout out to our two college leaders, Jill and Angie. It's been a pleasure to serve on this board with you as our college leaders. And bon voyage, and thank you to both of you.
Okay, Trustee Rojas.
Finance committee meeting, and was glad to attend Jill's reception. And,
Thank you. Trustee Viss.
Attended a meeting with the chancellor, attended the finance committee meeting, and goodbye, Angie, and goodbye, Jill.
Trustee DeMartini.
Thank you. Had the opportunity to have a tour of the Fire Science Building, which really impresses me of what opportunities we have here at MJC. It was just amazing. And I was able to attend Jill Stern's reception. Angie, I didn't get to yours, but I echo the words of my other fellow trustees. We wish you all the best in your new life, new position, your promotion. So take fond thoughts of MJC and Columbia College with you. I also had the opportunity to meet with the Chancellor. But one of the things that I did that I may sound like a broken record to those of you who've been here many years, but I appeared in the Patterson Apricot Parade with my signs about YCCD. And once again, I'm going to say what I always say is that I wish that we would have more presence in these community events, and we could have something in the parade and people walking around handing out brochures, inviting people to know about the offerings that are in Patterson or that are here. And I asked one of the people who was supervising, he said that the crowd estimate was between 15 and 18,000. And they provide free booths. If MJC had one, I think, 2 years ago, but I didn't see them. Did they have one this year? No, okay. But I strongly think that we need to have this presence in the community. There's a Newman Fall Festival coming up in the first weekend, Labor Day weekend, so that's an opportunity. I know that other cities have their events. Ceres usually has a parade. Anyway, the last thing I want to do, unless the chair is going to do it, is to let all of you know that we do have I think, an extremely important study session coming up this coming Monday. The board will have a study session from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., and I know some people have conflicts with classes, but it's going to be more information, as I understand it, about due process, and that's a subject that's extremely important to me, and I just want you to know about it in case you would like to attend.
What date is that?
I have Monday, June 18. If I didn't say that, thank you, for 11 to 1.
Pardon me, correction. It
the forums.
The 19th.
It's the 19th?
Mm-hmm. Well, the forums for the presidential candidates are Monday.
I just had YCCD on my calendar on the 18th. That must be it. So thank you so much. 19th.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Leslie?
Oh, okay. So I went to the board debriefing meeting. I went to see the Four Seasons on May 18th. 4 one-act plays written and directed by our own Michael Lynch in the Cabaret West. We have so much talent here, great productions, well done, and the audience was just totally engaged and enthusiastic. I love the Fire Science Tour. It's a great program. I'd never been in that area before. I saw what it was like to be in a collapsed building and a building on fire. And believe me, it's really, really hot, even from a safe distance, and lots of smoke, and you can't see anything. So it's kind of scary. I also went to the Modesto Symphony's Beethoven Meets graffiti concert on May 31st, and I was so proud of MJC that night, seeing that 2 of the 3 featured symphonic works were composed by our own music department faculty. They were specifically commissioned for this event. So they had John Hillenbrandt's piece, Valley Fever, and Alejandro Sabre's piece, Graffiti Jive. They played them twice. The Central West Ballet danced to them the second time, and they got a very enthusiastic standing ovation. So it was just a time for us, I think, to be really proud of our people. And I also went to the all-campus summer barbecue. It was great watching the volleyball and chatting with people. The policies and procedures meeting, the reception for Dr. Stearns on June 11th, the preview meeting, and yesterday I attended the Modesto Junior College Foundation meeting. I'm kind of meeting it out right now. And I'd like to encourage everyone who can to attend the 22nd Annual Summer Sonata coming up on July 19th. And I wish our two soon-to-be former presidents the very best in your new lives.
In keeping with tradition, I'll be brief. I went to the Fire Academy tour. I want to thank Ron Kripe and his staff. I've known Ron for a number of years when he was in his prior position of public safety, and myself, Ron, thank you. Finance Committee with my fellow trustees, thank you both for attending. President Stearns' reception, I echo what everybody has said. Angie, you're going off to the big smiles and happy land and sunshine, and Jill on to a new chapter with new challenges and great opportunities. So best wishes to both of you. I attended a local civic club where I did a presentation. I want to thank them for their invitation and regular scheduled meetings with the chancellor, and that's all I have. This board will now go back into closed session and take care of some matters that we could not get to in our allotted time span. So if you want to stick around, we'll have a report out after that. So.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yes, definitely.